All right, today we're jumping into Natasha Trethewey's incredible poem, Native Guard. And let me tell you, this isn't just poetry. It's a powerful story of betrayal from the Civil War, a story that official history literally tried to bury. But this poem, well, it forces us to look.
So this quote right here, this was a solemn promise. A Union colonel said this to his regiment of black soldiers, the Louisiana Native Guard, right after a devastating friendly fire incident. But the real question is, what actually happened to these men? And was that promise ever really kept? Let's find out.
Okay, so let's set the scene. You've got to picture this. It's April 9th, 1863. We're talking about the 2nd Louisiana Native Guard, one of the very first black regiments in the Union Army. And they have just seen their first real combat against Confederate forces down at Pascagoula, Mississippi.
So they're pulling back to their ship, they were outnumbered, and they probably think the worst is over. But then, out of nowhere, a Union gunboat, the Jackson, opens fire, not on the enemy, but directly on them.
And this is where the poem just pulls you right in. The soldier who's telling the story, the narrator, man, he describes this horrific moment when they realize what's happening. The poem's words just capture that chaos and shock, that feeling of ultimate betrayal. Just think about that line for a second. The men wearing the same blue uniform, supposedly fighting for the same cause, suddenly become their attackers. This wasn't just some tragic mistake. It was a profound, deadly betrayal, and it was rooted in the very same prejudice they were supposed to be fighting against. Now, to really get across the weight of this moment, Trethewey does something brilliant. She doesn't just describe a battle, she uses this incredibly vivid religious imagery to elevate the deaths of these soldiers from just an accident into something more like a sacred sacrifice.
You see, this language is so intentional. These soldiers aren't just dying, they're being turned into martyrs. They fall as in prayer, or with arms outstretched like Christ on the cross. It basically transforms this horrifying act of violence into a kind of crucifixion, where they die at the hands of their own allies.
So how in the world was this slaughter officially recorded? How did it get written down versus how it was actually experienced by the men in the ground? This, right here, is where the official story, the lie of the historical record, really starts to form.
And just look at this contrast. It's absolutely chilling. On one side, you have the colonel's official report. He calls the slaughter an unfortunate incident. It's so cold, so dismissive. But then you have the soldier's truth. It's poetic, it's spiritual. He doesn't just see men dying, he sees their very souls departing. And you know, that so-called unfortunate incident, it wasn't a one-off thing. Oh no. It was just the beginning of a whole pattern of betrayal and erasure that these black soldiers would have to face from the very army they were fighting for.
Let's just walk through this timeline, because it's pretty damning. It starts in April '63, with the friendly fire being brushed aside. By June, their dead are literally left unburied on the battlefield. Then their whole regiment gets renamed, stripping them of their identity. And finally, by '64, they're folded into a new unit where black officers are just flat out purged. It's a total, systematic erasure of their bodies, their identity, and their leadership.
So that brings us to the big question, right? If the official history, that page of history, completely failed to record their names and their sacrifices, where does their story even survive?
It survives right here, in this very poem. Trethewey's work becomes the monument these men were never given. It's a monument built out of words, one that makes absolutely sure their story endures. And this gets at a really cool idea, something we can call the poetic record. It's this idea that poetry can be more than just art. It can be a form of testimony. It can give a voice back to people who were silenced. Trethewey literally hands the pen back to the soldier and lets his experience become the true historical account that corrects all those official lies.
And the whole poem feels like the soldier's personal journal, doesn't it? It's his act of defiance. He's choosing ink and paper over what he calls a flawed, changeful memory. He's creating a permanent record to make sure that everything that was meant to be erased is instead preserved forever.
So let's end on this because it's such a powerful paradox. The only reason this poem even exists is because history broke its promise. The fact that we're talking about this now proves their names did not deck the page of history. And yet, by its very existence, this poem becomes that page. It fulfills the promise, but on its own terms, through art, through memory, and it just leaves you wondering, who really gets to write history?